Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post with me, Ghadi Francis. This is our weekly show where we bring you all the latest updates from the world's most volatile region. As you all know, India is witnessing a deadly second wave of the pandemic and we have been on a pause for some time. But while we were away, a lot has changed in West Asia, especially here. I'm talking about Gaza. I'm talking about a small coastal besieged strip. The Gaza Strip witnessed its worst fighting in years. Israel and Hamas rained rockets at each other and nations across the world pushed for a ceasefire, one that came 11 days after an intense cross-border fighting.
If it comes to responding to your aggression and claiming victory for our people and our sanctities, there are no red lines, sacred rules of engagement, or complicated calculations.
There
are only two ways that you can deal with them. You can either conquer them, and that's always an open possibility, or you can deter them. And we are engaged right now in forceful deterrence.
We are shocked and horrified that the Israelis would target the building that housed a peace bureau in Gaza. They long knew that a peace bureau was there, and they targeted it.
Prime Minister Netanyahu informed me that Israel has agreed to a mutual unconditional ceasefire.
I extend my deepest condolences to the victims of the violence and their loved ones.
Any ceasefire would be, by definition, between them, but we're ready to engage to support it.
The Secretary General appeals to all parties to immediately cease the fighting in Gaza and Israel.
We achieved our goals in the operation. It was an exceptional success.
We consider this battle as a quantum leap in the history of conflict with the enemy.
It's not just about infrastructure damage, but it's about the loss of entire families.
They say a war is never about two nations. So when Israel and Hamas started fighting, nations across the world jumped in, trying to push for peace and broker a ceasefire. So did Biden's behind-the-scenes diplomacy work? And what is his top diplomat now doing in West Asia?
After decades of division and conflict, we mark the dawn of a new Middle East.
Trump may have celebrated too soon. 9 months later, West Asia is facing a similar situation. A conflict that dates back to decades. Over 250 people had been killed. Rockets were raining non-stop, and the Gaza Strip was being leveled. When Biden announced his foreign policy agenda, the Israel-Palestine conflict did not play a key role in it. His priority was China and the Indo-Pacific, and he made that very clear in his first 100 days. But when the conflict broke out in Gaza, the 46th US president faced his first foreign policy crisis. In an area that wasn't his top focus. So Biden did what all US presidents do: fall back on the same default position. Biden asserted what many before him have. He said Israel has the right to defend itself.
My expectation and hope is that this will be closing down sooner than later. But Israel has a right to defend itself when you have thousands of rockets flying into your territory.
US presidents may come and go, but their support for Israel is unwavering.
We are fully supportive of Israel's right to defend itself from missiles landing on people's homes.
George W. Bush even went further to call Israel the oldest and best friend of the United States.
We consider the Holy Land a very special place, and we consider the Israeli people our close friends.
But this time, the political sands were shifting. Winds of change that were blowing in West Asia could be felt in the corridors of Capitol Hill. There was growing skepticism amid the Democrats, who slammed Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip. The main pivot point, however, was the strike on media offices. The evolving conflict meant that Biden's response was also evolving, even signaling an inflection point in the decades of Israel-US relations. But what surprised people more was the quiet behind-the-scenes push. No late-night tweets with flags, no press releases claiming victory, and definitely no press conferences. Biden's approach was muted and led by a singular goal: end the violence soon and get back to his domestic agenda. According to sources, there were nearly 80 phone calls. Out of them, 6 were between Netanyahu and Biden. Washington was on phone with Egypt and other Arab allies, pushing for a swift ceasefire.
I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu not too long ago. I'll be putting out a statement very shortly on that. My expectation and hope is that this will be closing down sooner than later.
As the conflict dragged on for days, the US president's tone also got sharper. On his third call with Netanyahu, Biden expressed support for a ceasefire. While this sounded like any other call, the tone was significant. By his fourth call came the most stark warning. Biden said that he expected a significant de-escalation on the path of a ceasefire. It is easy to see how the movie ends. Just like every other time, there's a ceasefire, one that is still holding as we speak. But this time, things were a little different. The focus was shifting in Washington, and no one knew that better than Biden. When he came to announce the ceasefire, Biden struck a tone of painstaking even-handedness.
I believe the Palestinians and Israelis equally deserve to live safely and securely and to enjoy equal measures of freedom, prosperity, and democracy. My administration will continue our quiet and relentless diplomacy toward that end. I believe we have a genuine opportunity to make progress, and I'm committed to working for it.
The president even dispatched his top diplomat. Blinken went on a whirlwind 4-day trip that started from Israel and ended in Jordan.
President Biden asked me to come here today really for four reasons. First, to demonstrate the commitment of the United States to Israel's security, to start to work toward greater stability and reduce tensions in the West Bank and Jerusalem, to support urgent humanitarian and reconstruction assistance for Gaza. Our goal is to give the Palestinian people, including those in Gaza, a renewed sense of confidence, of optimism, of real opportunity.
Blinken met with Egypt and Jordanian officials, key allies in shoring up the ceasefire. But the surprise announcement came in Ramallah. US was reopening its consulate general in Jerusalem, a move that restores ties with Palestinians, one that was degraded during the Trump administration. While Blinken's visit is aimed at sealing the ceasefire, many are now questioning the long-term strategy. But it looks like Biden is sticking to a tried and tested playbook, one that US presidents have followed over the years. Instead of trying to resolve the conflict, the US wants to manage it for now. Their goal is simple: continue to support Israel, offer some support to the Palestinians, and hope that the next conflict doesn't break out during their tenure. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
Like always, we will continue to bring you all the latest updates from the heart of the conflict. Don't go anywhere, we have a lot more lined up for today. But first, let's take a look at what's making headlines across West Asia.
Syria's Bashar al-Assad wins a record fourth term in office. With 95.1% votes in an election that will extend his rule, the election went ahead despite a UN-led peace process that had called for voting under international supervision. The win delivers Assad 7 more years in power, lengthening his family's rule over the country to nearly 6 decades. Anti-government protesters took to the streets of Baghdad to demand justice over a wave of deadly attacks on pro-democracy activists and journalists. Waving portraits of victims, demonstrators converged on all the main squares of the capital. Iran's Guardian Council has approved 7 hardliner candidates for its presidential elections, barring several prominent moderate candidates. Judiciary Chief Ebrahim Raisi seems to be the clear frontrunner to succeed Hassan Rouhani. As Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei supports the watchdog body's disqualification of leading moderate candidates, Turkish President Erdogan has dismissed mob boss Sedat Peker's allegations of corruption and other crimes against his top officials and allies. A series of bombshell videos by convicted gang leader Peker has attracted tens of millions of views. Erdogan has defended his interior minister, vowing to seek justice.
In the tiny coastal strip of Gaza, children live under fear. They are scared any moment could be their last and bear mental scars of years of conflict. What was once their homes and playground have now turned into dust, along with their hopes. We bring you a special report about the children of war and the trauma they bear.
Zina Dabuz frantically scribbled a note before slipping it under her mother's pillow. After the Israeli airstrike near her house, the 10-year-old is now scared of dying. The note read, "If we all die, put us in the same grave."
I feel strange, I'm very scared. Every time there's a bombardment, I'm very scared. Very scared.
This is the story of Gaza's children, who are bearing the brunt of a dangerous war. At the age of 10, this is not Zaina's first experience with war. But Gaza's history suggests it won't be her last. Zaina is one of the million children living in Gaza, the besieged coastal strip with a high population density. In the 11-day conflict, at least 63 children were killed. But for the the ones that have been spared, the mental scars are here to stay.
20
The
As an expert, I am certain that 100% of children in the Gaza Strip suffer at least from something called adjustment disorder. And its symptoms are depression, anxiety, and a behavioral disorder. This we will be able to observe it later if researches are conducted in schools, and we will be able to confirm that a catastrophic number of children need treatment and a reconstruction of their personality.
Many are showing signs of depression, anxiety or irritability, and behavioral disorders. Others are even wetting their bed. For children in their teens, this is their fourth war. Those under 13 have only known a life under blockade. Many have also just known the rule of the Hamas. Since 2007, the group has cracked down on dissent, enforced a strict moral code, and caused trouble in the Strip itself. For Ahmed, every small sound is a trigger. The stitches on his bare foot are the only reminder of the hours he spent under the rubble, screaming. His elder sister tries to comfort him. But every time he hears an explosion, the 2-year-old ends up crying.
I don't tell them, don't be afraid. I tell Maram, it's nothing. Nothing is going on. I'm next to you. But Ahmed says a lot, I'm scared, I'm scared. I tell him that they are balloons, that there's nothing to be scared of. But he keeps repeating, I'm scared. So I keep hugging him.
According to a 2012 UNICEF study, 91% of children report sleeping disturbances. 94% said they slept with their parents. 85% of them reported appetite changes. 82% always feel angry. 47% are biting their nails all the time. And 82% are always scared of death.
My children are having nightmares. They're not making any sense because of the fear. They are suffering from hysteria. My little one takes medicine to be able to sleep because she is always tired from the bombing and the strange sounds that we hear. It is crazy. We can't stand it anymore.
There is no tally on how many children are suffering. But data suggest the trauma here is unlike anywhere in the world. A number of them need access to treatment, mental health care that the Strip lacks. There is also growing unfocused rage, coupled with the lack of hope.
Sometimes I sleep, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I sleep for an hour and then stay seated awake.
I was next to Masa. I was afraid. I was calling for people, come help us. Because an airstrike happened, so they needed to break the rubble to get us out.
Gaza's current generation has known nothing but war. A whole life of bombing and running to escape strikes. For kids across the globe, childhood is marked by laughter, games, and milestones. For Gaza's children, it is bombs and trauma. West Asia Bureau, WION. World is One.
We cannot imagine our lives without the big tech. But what happens when they start playing a big role in a conflict? The big tech has been accused of manipulating the narrative, muffling voices, and peddling fake news. Let's take a look.
Videos of buildings collapsing. Reels of rockets across the night sky. Pictures of buildings reduced to dust. And testimonies from grieving families. The war is not just happening on the ground, it's also playing out on social media. In a video that was posted on Twitter by an Israeli government spokesperson, it looks like Hamas were launching rockets at Israelis from densely populated areas. But the footage, which was retweeted by hundreds, was not even from Gaza. In fact, it was not even from that week. This is just one piece of misinformation among the thousands that are circulating. Another one is this image. It claims to show Israelis celebrating as a fire rages at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. While the image is real, it was not the mosque that caught fire. Instead, it was just a tree burning during the Jerusalem Day celebrations. The lies have been amplified as they were shared thousands of times. In a conflict like this, misinformation is deadly, and social media giants do not seem to have an answer to it. Instead, what they have been accused of censoring is any sort of pro-Palestinian content. Palestinians are accusing big tech of digital apartheid. They're being silenced on social media, and their posts and hashtags are being removed. The main flashpoint seems to be posts about Sheikh Jarrah. Twitter has suspended several accounts talking about the recent evictions. Both Instagram and Twitter blamed the takedowns on an error made by their automated systems. But their explanation has not satisfied rights groups. When clashes broke out at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the hashtags for the mosque were hidden. Some posts were even taken down because of the hashtag. According to some news reports, the posts were even taken down because its content moderation system mistakenly associated the site with a designation it reserves for terrorist organizations. Lack of transparency and skewed algorithms also means it is not clear how much content has been censored. Debate over Israel's role sometimes even slides into broader slurs, especially anti-Semitic abuse. Several posts seem to endorse hate speech, along with the rise of anti-Semitic attacks. Major Israeli news outlets also called for a halt of what they said were posts inciting violence against journalists. The social media battlefield is an inevitable adjunct, one that is party to every international conflict. But the new round of Israel-Palestine conflict pushes these companies onto treacherous terrain. This is a decades-long conflict, one that existed long before the birth of Facebook or Twitter. But hostility over generations and growing anger among young Palestinians means that the conflict is spelling war, and social media is the new battlefront. West Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
With the economic crisis worsening in Lebanon, many are giving up their pets after being unable to feed or care for them. Some call it like giving a part of your soul away. We bring you this heartbreaking story from Lebanon.
هون هذه أوضة لكسي، هيدا بيتها، هولي كل شيء ليش كولر مشتتة سشوارة.
Ibrahim Adika raised Lexi since she was a tiny pup. He brought the German Shepherd home years ago for some furry companionship. But then came Lebanon's economic crisis, one that left Ibrahim jobless.
I worked hard to set all this up because I thought she would stay mine, but unfortunately she didn't. We never thought it would get to this point. The situation in the country is tough.
Ibrahim was laid off last year. He had spent around a year caring for Lexi. But when the bank started calling, he saw no option but to sell her.
I got to the point where I couldn't feed her anymore. The bank was pressuring me and I hit a wall. I didn't find any other solution. It's the worst situation. I wish I'd done something else.
Ibrahim says he sold a part of his soul. The 26-year-old often sits by her empty kennel, devastated by the loss of Lexi. But he's not alone. Many Lebanese pet owners face the same dilemma. This is Lebanon's worst economic crisis in decades. Thousands of citizens have lost their jobs. Others have seen their income reduced to pennies. As many families struggle to stay afloat, pet owners are asking for help to feed animals. Many are selling their pets, or worse, abandoning them.
Everyone's dumping their pets. We were surprised. At the end of the day or the beginning of the day, there are boxes outside our office of kittens and house cats, some of them with health issues. So you feel like their owners are no longer able to take care of them, so they are dumping them at our door.
With over half of the population now living in poverty, many Lebanese are depending on NGOs to get by, waiting for donations to feed their pets. Amal Ramadan used to make donations to an animal charity called PAW. But these days, she is the one receiving free bags of food for her pets. While Amal says she would rather starve than give them up. Other pets haven't been so lucky in Lebanon. Pet abandonments are on the rise, and shelters are overcrowded.
We get a lot of calls, but we can't keep up anymore. We get calls to take in the dogs, but this is the maximum number we can take in terms of food, number of dogs, and the shelter in general.
As young professionals flee Lebanon, activists are also ensuring the immigration of their pets. Dedicated shelters are making sure that the pets have a shot at a new life also. As Lebanon's economy crumbles every day, it looks like the fate of its people are mirrored in those of their pets. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One. That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, bringing you more stories from the world's most volatile region. Until then, stay home and stay safe. I am Ghadi Francis, and you are watching WION. World is One.